Hello and welcome to Monday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic. And on screen today we have got another puzzle by the phenomenon from Hong Kong, the 17-year-old Under Beyond. This has appeared on Logic Masters Germany just very recently, and it has very few solves on it. Only 4 people, I think, have correctly solved this according to the statistics on that site. So I suspect this is a monster. Now, I am slightly nervous about this, and this is going to be a very highly pressured edition of Cracking the Cryptic because it is getting on for 7 o'clock in the evening UK time. Now, if you're familiar with the channel, you'll know that I need this video to go out in an hour and a half. That means basically I've got about half an hour or so in order to solve this, because I then need to edit it, I need to export it, I need to upload it to YouTube, I then need to add the cards to it, the instructions, etc. That all takes ages and ages. I was very much intending to try this puzzle much earlier in the day, but life has got in the way, and this is not the position I wanted to be in, especially not with one of Under Beyond's puzzles, because in my experience they are not conducive to swift solving, but we shall see how we go. Wish me luck. Couple of bits I want to mention. I want to mention, of course, our Kickstarter book. There'll be a card on the screen there. I got it right this time. And do have a look if you haven't had a chance to. This is going to be the best Sudoku book in the history of Sudoku, and I'm in no doubt about that. The quality of the puzzles in the book will be absolutely stunning. I do actually just want to say I want to make a quick apology though. If you are a setter who's appeared on the channel before, well, if you've appeared on Cracking the Cryptic, you are a world-class setter. I just want to say sorry to some of the constructors who haven't appeared in the book. You know, Mark and I had to make this selection of 26 puzzles, or 25 or 26 puzzles that we wanted to appear, and it was like choosing between your children. It was impossibly difficult. It's an invidious position to be in. And you know, we could easily have made a 300 page book with 300 puzzles in it, and it would have been amazing, but it would have been too long. So we were given the cutoff of trying to make the book a reasonable size with 26 puzzles, and that meant that we had to make a cut somewhere. It was a nightmare to do this, quite frankly. And I can well understand why there are some world-class setters out there who might be thinking, oh well, my puzzle should have been in, and I wish my puzzle was in. Well, I wish your puzzle was in as well, to be honest. But I hope you understand that we had to make a cut, and it was incredible. Just know it was incredibly difficult for us to do that. That's all I really wanted to say. Now, if you're a patron of the channel on Patreon, do check out the new content. We released it yesterday. There's 2 new puzzles there as our monthly bonus for November. Getting some lovely feedback. Not too difficult this month, I think. So if you were struggling with Scott Strossar's puzzle hunt last month, this might be today. Well, yesterday's puzzles should be doable, so do check them out. Now let me read you Under Beyond's rule set today. The rules are understandable, so I've got no excuses from that perspective. Normal Sudoku rules apply. Digits in a cage sum up to the top left number of the cage. Digits cannot repeat in a cage, i.e. we've got absolutely standard killer Sudoku rules. Clues outside the grid show the sum of the digits between 1 and 9 in that row and column, or row or column. So absolutely standard sandwich Sudoku as well. So if you've never come across sandwich Sudoku, let me explain. This 23 clue, let's imagine there was a 9 there and a 1 there. Now the 23 would be saying that the sum of the cells sandwiched between the 1 and the 9 in this row, so that's those 4 cells, have to sum up to 23. And obviously it could be the other way around. You're always just looking for the sum of the digits between the 1 and the 9, wherever they live. Under Beyond has been extremely miserly. He's only given us 6 sandwich clues, a smattering of killer Sudoku clues. Good grief. Do have a go yourselves. I mean, seriously, I cannot recommend this young man's puzzles highly enough. He is one of the geniuses of the constructing world, and I always love his puzzles. So the way to play is to click the link under the video as usual. Now I get to play. Let's get cracking. Let's not take too long about this, Simon. And I will fill in that 6 cage with 1, 2 and 3. And what next? One of the things, if you've never watched me do sandwich Sudoku before, that I recommend is that you try and keep track of the cells that cannot be 1s and 9s in the puzzle. So as I stare at this grid, if I was solving this at speed, I would immediately green out all of those cells as not being able to be 1s and 9s. So let's think about why that is. I mean, let's imagine that square was a 9. How would the 23 clue ever work? Well, it can't work, because the furthest away I could put the 1 would be here, and that would give me 3 cells to add up to 23. Now, 3 cells adding to 23, if you have no restriction, is easy, because you can use 6, 8, and 9. But here you can't use a 9, because you'd be repeating it in the row. So the best you're ever going to do is 6, 7, and 8, which only add up to 21. And that's why this square has to be green. 31, the way is incredibly constrained from a sandwich Sudoku perspective. The way I think about 31 is, let's put a 1 here, and I don't know, let's put a 9 here. I mean, this won't work, but let me do that just to explain why it won't work. If we think about what any row of a Sudoku adds up to, it will contain the digits from 1 to 9. If you add up the digits 1 to 9, you get 45. So if I know the green cells, the cells between the 1 and the 9 in this row add up to 31, I know that 1 and 9 add up to 10, therefore I know that string of cells there adds up to 41. Well, that implies those 2 cells must sum up to 4. And you can see that's normally possible, but not possible in sandwich Sudoku, because in order for these 2 squares to add up to 4, they'd have to be a 1 and a 3, and that's impossible. So because you'd repeat the 1 in the row. So in fact, in this row, we can immediately green these in, and we know more than that. We know that wherever we locate the 1, let's imagine there was a 1 here, there would have to be a 9 here. If there was a 9 here, there would have to be a 1 here. We can only have 1 cell in this row that is outside the sandwich and its crusts. 29 is almost the same, it's just slightly less restricted, because the 2 cells, or the cell or the 2 cells outside the sandwich have to sum to 6 in the 29 case, because you've got 1 plus 9 is 10, plus 29 is 39, 45 minus 39 is 6, and you can make 6 either as a single digit like that, or you can put in a 2-4 pair, for example. But the 2-4 pair could equally be over here or separated across the grid, but the key point is those squares can never be 1s and 9s. So that's all a very long-winded way of explaining how to get green cells into these positions. The green cells don't give you any digits. In fact, in this puzzle, it looks like they're completely useless, and that has been a complete waste of time. Time being a very precious commodity at the best of times, but especially at this particular time. This square is interesting because of the 5 clue. Now, can this be a 1 or a 9? And the answer, I think, is no. Because if this is a 1 or a 9, in fact, let's actually label it as 1 or 9 rather than 9. If this is a 1 or a 9, then we know that either both of those squares, we either have to have a 2-cell sandwich adding to 5, well, that clearly breaks the 11 gauge, I'm not telling you any secrets there, or I've got to have a single cell adding to 5, which means this square would have to be a 1 or a 9 in order to make the sandwich clue work. But you can see that either of these options for this square most certainly is not making that domino add up to 11. So we can actually green this square. I'm actually wondering whether this 11 cage can ever contain a 1 or a 9. I mean, you can see we can never put a 1 in an 11 cage because you'd have to accompany it with a 10. Now, if you put a 9 in, you can't put the 9 here, because if the 9 is here, this would have to be a 2, and that would clash. So the 9 can only go there, which would make that a 2. That would, and that breaks, because then you'd have to go 3, and that would have to be a 1, and the 31 clue makes that impossible. We've already looked at why this square is green. So actually, those 2 squares are also green. Now that means it's still useless. It doesn't do anything. No, it doesn't do anything. It's a good deduction, don't get me wrong, but it's not enough. We've got a suspicious pattern of cages, haven't we? 15s and 14s and 13s in columns 1, 5 and 9. I'm not sure about... Right, well, there's certainly an interesting thing to note about column 5 there, because where do the digits 1, 2 and 3 go in this column? Well, in box 8 here, you can't put a 1, 2 or 3 in those two squares because you've already used 1, 2 and 3 in the box. In a 15 cage, you can put one of the digits 1, 2 and 3, but you can't put two of them, because even if you put, say, I don't know, let's put 2 and 3 in there, that would make that square a 10. That's not going to work. So you can put exactly 1 in here, exactly 1 in here, and you can't put 1 in a 14 cage. So there are only 3 possible positions for 1s, 2s and 3s in this column. Well, sort of. I mean, there are actually 3 possible positions for the 1, 2 or 3 in this box, but the point is there can only be one of them. So there's 1, 2, 3, and a weird sort of 1, 2, 3 triple in a virtual sense. Now this... No, I was just thinking if that was 1 it would be interesting, because we'd then know where the 9 was, because you can't make a 2-cell sandwich add up to 16, because although you can make 16 in 2 cells with 7 and 9, when you put the crust on the sandwich you get a repeated 9. So if this was 1, the 9 would have to go in one of those 2 cells, which would be interesting. But I don't know. The problem is that could be a 2 or a 3 as well. Now, I suspect that there will be some people shouting at their screen at the moment saying, "Put the digit in." Well, I am trying. 3. It's almost interesting to think about where 1s, 2s and 3s can go in column 1 as well, look. Because you can't put 1 here because of the 1, 2, 3 triple. You can't put 1 in a 13 cage. You can only put 1 of them in a 15 cage. So that's 6 cells there that can contain a maximum of 1 of the digits 1, 2 and 3. So either there is a 1, 2 and 3. If there's no 1, 2 or 3 in the 15 cage, and there doesn't need to be because you could have 4, 5 and 6 make up the 15 cage. If there wasn't none, you'd have 1, 2, 3 triple in those positions. And that would be very interesting, because then the 31, this square would have to be a 1. Because the cell outside the sandwich in the 31 row has to be a 4. So one way of thinking about it actually is that square has to be a 1, 4 or a 9. And that square has to be a 1, 4 or a 9. So if you knew these were 1, 2 and 3, you would know that this was a 1. It's really interesting actually, because look, you've got a similar thing going along column 9 of the grid. You've got the same 3. It's almost like a mutant swordfish. It is actually a weird pattern. If you think about where 1s, 2s and 3s can go in these columns where they're restricted, you've got 3 definitely available positions in column 1, you've got 2 definitely available positions in column 5, and you've got 3 again in column 9. And then you've got 3 15 cages, which could have a maximum of 1 each in those. So you've actually got you've got 8, 9, 10, 11. That is really interesting, because I've got to put, let's ask the question, how many 1s, 2s and 3s are there in those 3 columns of the grid? And this isn't a trick question, but there must be 9. There are 3 1s, 3 2s and 3 3s in these 3 columns. Another knowledge bomb from Cracking the Cryptic. But this knowledge bomb, I'm going to take it further, because that means I've got to find, in effect, 9 purple squares for these columns. And at the moment, I've got 8 here, and I've got the opportunity for 3 more maximum. So that's 11. So there are only 2 degrees of freedom here in terms of the possible No, this is better than that, because there are 11 possible locations I've identified, because I'm counting each 15 cage as 1 location, because I can only put 1 of the digits 1, 2 and 3 in each of them. So there are 11 possibles. Let me highlight those in blue. 11 possibles here. But in this row, it's not possible for both of those squares to be 1, 2 and 3. One of them can be a 1. That's the best I can do. So that gets me down to 10 possible locations. Now, can we just get rid of 1 more, either purple or blue? Is it possible? Well, that can't. Aha! I have you now. Look. What? Is it possible these 3 squares are a 1, 2, 3 triple? Because if it is not possible, then I have to get rid of one of these purples. I know I've got to get rid of one of these purples, because only one of them can be a 1, 2 and 3, and that will give me exactly 9 regions in these columns that have to contain the digits 1, 2 and 3. So this would be incredibly powerful, probably. But firstly, I have to convince myself that I can't make these a 1, 2, 3 triple, and I can't, because we've already looked at that this can't be a 1. Because then I'd need a 9 in one of the perimeter cells. And that obviously a 9 is not equal to 1, 2 or 3. Now, can this be a 1? And I don't think it can be. We need a 16 sum in the sandwich. So if the 9 was here, this would have to be a 7-9 pair. That would repeat the 9. That's not possible. So the 9 can't be here. If we're trying to make a 1, 2, 3 triple, this can't be a 9. This could be a 9, that is possible. This can't be a 9, because if this is a 9, we're saying those squares add up to 16, plus 1 plus 9 is 26. These 2 squares would have to add up to 19. That's not possible. So the 9 can't go here. So the question is, can this be a 9? But you run into the same problem. Now these 3 squares have to add up to 19. And look, this can't be a 1 because we're hypothesizing a 1 here. So this is 19. So these 2 squares are either adding up to 17 or 16. Either way, they've got to include a 9. So what does all this mean? You may well ask, but I think what it means is that it's not possible for these squares to be a 1, 2, 3 triple. It's just not. And that means the maximum number of purple squares in row 1 is 2. Now, I don't know where they go. That would be too much to ask, but let's just get rid of one of them. I'll get rid of that one, just for the sake of exposition, like that. So now let us count the number of 1s, 2s and 3s. It's it's possible to put in these columns as an absolute maximum. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because I can only put one of these purples in. I'll get rid of that one as well so it's clearer. That 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Therefore, now this is where it's going to get really complicated. Each of these coloured regions now, ignore the greens, I mean each of the purple and the blue must contain a 1, 2 or a 3. Now this is what the reason it's going to get complicated is what I'm really saying here is that 2 of these 3 cells in row 1 must contain 1, 2 and 3, but I don't know which one. I know there must be exactly 1 in each 15 cage. There must be a 1 in one of these 2 positions. And as there must be a 1 in one of these 2 positions, there can be no 9. Because the 9 will have to go into one of those 2 squares. So that's useful. That gives me a 1, 4 pair in row 5. Well, obviously that's going to be a 1, 2 or a 3. So maybe it's these 2 squares. So these 2, yeah, this is interesting. In row 9 of the grid, we know there have to be exactly 2 cells in these particular columns that contain 1s, 2s and 3s, and this time we do know where they are, because this square cannot be a 1, 2 or 3, because there's already a 1, 2, 3 in that box. So these are 1, 2, 3. Yeah, this is good. This is perfect. Neither of these squares can be a 3, because if they're a 3, how are we going to make our 2 cells outside the sandwich add up to 6? Well, the only way would be to put another 3 with them, which can't happen. So these are not 3, and this is a 1, 2 pair. That is, what an idea that is. Let's just take a moment, and I can only spare a moment to do it, but let's just admire the sheer panache to come up with an entry like that. I think this must be what's intended, because it's so, it feels right, doesn't it? This feels like where we were being led with this 1, 2, 3 triple, the particular arrangements of these cages around the edges of these columns. It's just beautiful. Now, and I can see how we can take, oh look, this little square is going to come in handy, because where does the 9 now go in this row? We know one of these squares is a 1, and we know there's 2 cells outside the grid which are adding up to 6, so there is a 2, 4 pair. So if I was to put, if this square is the 1, you have to put the 9 here where it can't go. We've already looked at this. It can't go there because of the 5 clue. And this would have to be a 2, 4 pair. Now this could be a 2, 4 pair, but this cannot be a 9. So this cannot be a 1. If this cannot be a 1, it's a 2. That's a 1. That's a 1. That's a 4. This is a 9 to make the 31 clue work. This must be a 4. This must be a 9 to make the 29 clue work. And I've completely abandoned my greening of the grid. I'm well aware of that. But I have got digits in using this method, so I'm happy enough with that. Oh, that's nonsense. I shouldn't have done that. Let me just delete that, sorry. I don't know that this is a 1, 2 or a 3. I don't know that this is a 1, 2 or a 3. Oh, no, I do with that one. I know that one's a 1, 2 or a 3. That was the logic on column 5 in the first place that got me thinking about the other, because there's only 3 positions in column 5 where 1s, 2s and 3s can go. So this definitely is a 1, 2 or 3. That one is not. The other 1, 2 or 3 is in one of those 2 squares, but I don't know which one. You might be able to get somewhere looking at this column, look, and the arithmetic on it. We've got 28, 32, 33. Those 2 squares have got to add up to 12 to make 45 without using 4, 8. So these are either 5, 7 or 3, 9. Okay, but they can't be 5, 7 because 5, 7 gives the 13 cage no ability to get to 13. If this was 5 and 7, let's look at that. If this is 5 and 7, this can't be 4, 9, 5, 8 or 6, 7. So these are not 5 and 7. And if they're not 5 and 7, they must be 3 and 9. And that's 1, 2, 3. So this is a 9, this is a 3. This is not, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. So this is a 3, so it can be purple. And this is purple, and we know there are only 2 purples in this row, so this square is not a 1, 2 or a 3. And in fact, look, oh, okay, and there's a 1, 2 and a 3 looking at it, so that is not exactly knowledge, is it? But I got there by a much more interesting method. Okay. Oh, how to feel silly. 2. Where does 2 go in those 3 squares? Look, just Sudoku is pointing to those 3 squares as having to contain a 2. You can't put a 2 in a 13 cage. A 2 in there would put a 9 beneath it, which would clash, so the 2 must go there. Okay, there must be a 3, in fact, in one of those 2 squares. 3 in one of these 2 squares. Uh, 9 must live in one of those positions. 1, yeah, where does 1 go? This is a 1, 3 pair here, look, because of the 1s in these squares. So this square's got to be 5, 6 or 8, which means this square's got to be 9, 6 or 8. Could we do anything with this column? We've got 29, 30, 32, so this time we need 13. Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can. Look at the yellow squares have to add to 13, but 4, 9 is not a possibility because we can't put 4 or 9 in here. So the options are 5, 8. Now 5, 8 is not possible. Let's just work out why. If this was a 5, 8 pair, you can't fill the 14 cage because 5, 9 and 6, 8 are no longer possible. So this is not 5, 8 and must be 6, 7. Now if 6, 7 is in these 2 squares, this cannot be a 6, 8 pair. So that means we get right down to 5 and 9. Nine must be in one of those cells. 5 must be in one of these squares. 4 must be in one of these squares. That means those 2 squares are a 4, 5 pair. Look, this square must be 6 or 7. Nine must live in one of those cells. And, okay, so we've... Okay. So how do we keep making progress here? We've got... Ooh, I know how we can. This square. If this square can't be a 1 or a 9, and it can't be 9 anymore, this square can't be a 1. Because if it's a 1, I need 3 cells to make the sandwich work. So this is a 2. This column now has got 29, 31. Those have to add up to 14. Is that possible? Well, we can get rid of 9 from this square. If that's 9, those 2 squares would have to add up to 5. And if that's a 1, that would have to be a 4, which clashes. If that's a 3, that would have to be a 2, which clashes. So there's no 9 here. And maybe we can use the 12 clue now. Yeah, we can. Yeah, the 12 clue, look, this can't be a 9 because the 1's in one of those 2 squares. So if that's a 9, there isn't enough space in the sandwich. So that's not 9. Well, it's not 9, so that's 9. That means there is a 4 in the sandwich. Yeah, this is good. So how do you make a 12 sandwich here? We could have 4 and 8. That would be possible. If it's a 3-cell sandwich, it can't use a 2 So it would have to be 3, 4 and 5, which would clash. So it's not that. It is 4, 8. It must be a 4, 8 in those two positions. This is a 1. This is a 3. There's a 1 in one of those squares. And that must be a 6 or a 7, because that's what we need to complete the row, which means that's a 6 or a 7, which means those are 2, 5 and 8 to complete the column. These are 3 and 8 to complete this box. These are 5, 6 and 7 to complete this box. These are 6, 7 and 8 to complete that box. That's not 9 anymore. Now. What now? Come on, let's keep this going. So 31 we've used, 12 we've used, 29 we've used. The 23 actually might be restricted now because I've made that square green, but that square, look, can't be a 1 or a 9. So that is in effect green. This is in effect green. Yeah, this is important. Let's colour those in green and look at it. Because we know 23 must be at least a 4-cell sandwich. So if I try and put a 1 or a 9 here, 1, 2, 3, 4, I can't put a 1 or a 9 here. So this can't be green, and the same reasoning applies there, of course. So these... Oh, this is beautiful. Look, we've got a 1, 9 here. So this can't... This also is green. In fact, this whole column is green. So where do the 1s and 9s go in row 3 of the grid? That square has to be a 1 or a 9. We still don't know about the rest of that, though. Now, do we know... So the cells outside the sandwich here are adding up to 45 minus 23 minus 1 minus 9. So that's 12. That could be 2 or 3 cells. So, okay, sorry, I don't think I know which one of those is the 1 or 9 yet. That's green. That's green. So in this row, I can see why that square can't be a 9. If that square's a 9, something interesting happens to this 14 cage, look. Because now the only way of making 16 is to put the 1 here, and that means these two squares have to be a 6, 8 pair. And now this 14 cage is impossible because it can't contain a 9 and it can't contain a 6 or an 8. But unfortunately, I don't think that's enough. Because I also need to be able to get rid of 1 from this square, which is not really... no, this can't be 1. Just by simple stuff. If this is 1, you've got to put a 9 here. And you can't because there's a 9 in the column already. So actually this square is green. Now if this square is green, where are we putting... Those are obviously green. Where are we putting the 1s and 9s in this row? Well, we can't put them there. You can't put 16 in this square. So this square is a 1 or a 9. That means that square is green and not 1 or 9. 1 or 9 come out of there. 1 and 9 come out of there. We get a 1-9 pair. And I don't... Can that be a 4-cell sum? Surely not, because we've already looked at this, didn't we? If this is a 4-cell sandwich, you have to make those 3 squares add up to 19, which is impossible because you have to repeat the 9 as one of them is a 3. So this square has to be a 1 or a 9, and that can't, a 9 there means that's a 1, that's a 9, that's a 1. 1 must live in one of those squares. 9 is now necessary in this row and can't go here, so it must go there. So we are looking for a 3-cell sum to 12 there. Those three squares have got to be 3, 4 and 8 by the looks of it. These two squares have got to be a 6, 8 pair because of the 9. That means that the 14 is a 5, 9 pair, and there's a 9 here. So that's a 9, that's a 5, that's not 5 anymore. This is now the 23 is coming into its own. In fact, there's lots of things going on. I can see that's a 7. Let me just do that while I see it. Okay, so that's a 4, 5 pair there. That's interesting. Look, sort of deadly pattern going on. Presumably that's going to be resolved by this 11 cage. But 4, 5, we can remove 5 from this square, so this becomes a 5. But that wasn't actually what I was looking at. I was looking at whether this could be an 8. If this is an 8, we know those three squares there have to add up to 12 to make the outside of our sandwich work. But this can't be an 8 because that would require 1 and 3 and would repeat the 1 in the row. So this has to be 2. This has to be 8. That's not 8 anymore. That can't be 8 by the same reason that couldn't have been 8. So the 8 must go there. And these two squares have to add up to 10. So this is a 6 or a 7. And I don't think we know yet which one that's going to be. Okay. Maybe I can do more with... We've got quite a lot of 1s in the grid. Yes, I can. The 5 clue, that can't be a 1. So that must be the 1 in this box. This must be a 6 or a 7 to complete the box. 6, 7, 4, 5. So this 5 can't be a single cell 5 now. You can see that for two reasons. A, there's a 5 in the column already, and B, you can't put a 1 here. So this must be a 2-cell sandwich adding to 5, which means it's 2 and 3. The 1 goes here. This 9 is pointing at a 9 there. Sudoku forces this to be a 1. These have got to be a 6, 8 pair. This has got to be a 4. This has got to be an 8. This 8 seeing the 8 and the 6 at the top. That's not 6 anymore. Oh, come on, Simon. Keep it going. 2, 3 here gives us an 8 at the bottom, though. That square's got to be a 3. That can't be a 5. Because of the 5 there. Or a 6. That's a 7. Oh, that's a 5. That's a 6. 5's got to live in one of those two squares by Sudoku. Now, how do we finish this off? So I've used the 16. I've used the 5. I've all but used the 23. I think... This 16 cage, is that... Oh, the 8 here, no, that's... Actually, let's do that first. 8, 7. This is a 3 by Sudoku. It can't be a 1 or a 2. That means that's a 2 and that's a 1. 2 must be in one of those squares. 6, 7... So this 16 cage, look, it can't contain a 1. So it's got to have a 2 in it. We've already seen that. Does it have to have a 3? Yes, it does. Because 2, 4, 5 and 6 would add up to 17. So there is a 3 in here, which we don't know where it goes. But the other two cells, therefore, will have to add up to 11. So that's either 6 and 5 or 4 and 7. Oh, it's really close to... That is really close to eliminating it. 8 here has got to go there, look. This square's got to be 6 or 7 now. 8's got to go here. 6 has got to go here. That 6 is forcing 6, 7 there. That's nice. 7, 4, 5. That gets me the 5 and the 4 resolved. And the 7 and the 6 resolved. And the 6 here. 6 has got to live in one of those squares. This 7, yeah, look, we had to make sure those added up to 12. So that's got to be a 3, that's got to be a 4. In this row, we still need to place, we need to put an 8 somewhere. The 8 can only go here. And we need 4 and 6, which must be like that. That forces that to be a 6. These two squares are 2 and 5. These two squares are 3 and something, 3 and 7. Now there's no 6 in my 16 cage. So this has got to be 2, 3, 4, 7. And the 7, look, the 7 is forced. It's got to go here, which means that's a 2. These squares have got to be 3 and 4. There's a 4 here. So that's 4, that's 3. This 3 is giving us the 3 and the 2. That's giving us a 7 and a 3 into those squares. So those 3 squares there have got to be 3, 4 and 5, which points 4, 3, 5. That should be a 5 by Sudoku. These squares have got to be... this 5 is giving us the 5 and the 2 and the 7. Yes, I did it. Not 41 minutes. That's a long video, I know. Especially as I was trying to go hard or quickly. But that start was so difficult. I mean, it's so beautiful as well, isn't it? It's just, as I said, it's just such utter panache from a 17-year-old to come up with, or from any age to come up with that. The way that is executed is beautiful. And this idea, actually, I'm just thinking about it now. The idea of 1s, 2s and 3s being in 9 positions in these rows of the grid and sort of having to count where they can appear was very much in line with the MSLS technique that we looked at in a classic Sudoku a couple of weeks ago, following, I think it was Tatooine Sunset by Philip Newman, and then the subsequent correspondence by Tom Collier and Sam Kappelman-Lynes. So this is very much along that line, isn't it? It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating, and perhaps I overcomplicated it. I don't know. Let me know. I felt that was very much the way we were meant to solve it. It seemed so beautiful once I spotted it. But let me know what you thought. I do read the comments. Thank you for watching. I now get on with my editing, exporting, and uploading, I hope. See you next time on Cracking the Cryptic.